So I'm sure a lot of you have probably read that title and have become deeply confused. Apple have never been known to provide security updates for older versions of iOS after all. Well, credit where credit is due. As it happens, that actually isn't true. Apple have recently provided updates for older versions of iOS for devices that they have arbitrarily decided can't update to the newest versions of iOS, which is an improvement for them, I guess. And it seemed recently that they were going to extend this to users who simply didn't want to upgrade to iOS 15 by continuing to provide security updates for iOS 14. And for a while they actually did do this by releasing iOS 14.8.1, but now they've completely pulled that update and they aren't providing any more updates to iOS 14. They haven't even released a statement or anything. It seems like they've just quietly backtracked on what could have been an out-of-character pro-consumer move. But nope, if you own an iPhone or any other iOS device, you are now forced to upgrade to iOS 15 whether you want to or not. Frankly, it just seems to me that this is another instance of a company forcing updates on users, something that seems to be all too common these days. It seems that most companies will just try to force their users to install the latest thing whether the user wants to or not. You've got companies like Microsoft trying to manipulate the user to install the newest thing through social engineering, and somehow that's actually comparatively honest compared to some companies. Other companies will just forcefully auto-install updates without giving the user any input whatsoever. And I think that Apple are particularly malicious when it comes to this. Sure, they don't force users to update their devices, but without security updates, what choice does the user really have? And once you do update your device, you have no choice but to stick with that update, as Apple runs strict verifications on any iOS installation you might try to make. So, if you try to downgrade for whatever reason, Apple will actively block you from doing so, which is a disgusting violation of user freedoms. So that means that if you find your device has been slowed down or has had its battery life reduced by a new iOS update, as is often the case when devices reach the end of their life and Apple wants to force you to upgrade, you have no choice but to stick with that update because Apple will not let you downgrade, besides in a few rare instances where Apple still signs old firmware versions due to an oversight. Now you might argue that there's no reason why the end user would want to downgrade their iOS version. After all, running out-of-date software does introduce security risks, but I can prove that downgrading can be beneficial to the user. As a child, I actually had an iPhone 3GS, and as you can imagine, at the time I had it, the device was very old and slow, as it was a hand-me-down. But as I found out, it was only slow because Apple had slowed it down with iOS updates. Once I downgraded the device back to iOS 4.1, I think it felt as fast as any new phone, and it was still capable of doing everything that I needed. It's rare that this is possible with iPhones these days, but if it were possible, I guarantee you that there would be far fewer people buying new iPhones, as older versions of iOS still work absolutely fine, and would even be absolutely fine to use if Apple would just backport security updates. Now, it goes without saying, where possible you should absolutely keep your devices fully up to date. Running outdated software is a very real security risk, but the choice to upgrade should always be one that the end user is free to make themselves, not something that's forced on them by a company. And when Apple does stuff like this, it makes it hard for me to believe that they're really doing this with the user's best interests at heart. No, instead they're almost certainly doing this as part of their planned obsolescence strategy. If they can force users to upgrade to the newest versions of iOS, they can slow their devices down more quickly. After all, if a user decides to stick with one version of iOS indefinitely, while still receiving backported security updates, what reason would they have to buy a new Apple device if they're still content with their current one? So in conclusion, in my opinion, this is another anti-consumer move by Apple, and I don't think it should be tolerated at all. Apple is a multi-billion-dollar company who could easily spare the resources to backport security updates if they wanted to, and it probably wouldn't hurt their bottom line very much either. But ultimately, Apple cares so little about the end user that they won't even do that much. So with that said, that's it for today's video. I hope you got something out of it, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.